In a second, we shall be live.
Okay.
And we are live. It's You've Got Mel with another wonderful children's writer, but also a doctor in psychology. So let's give it up for Dr. Amy Rebecca Epstein Murrell. You have more names than Miss Joan Hunter Dunn. But before, we need the jingle because I'm going to forget to do the jingle.
Okay.
And you know, people watch from all over the world because they expect the jingle. We got to
Well, we
do.
wouldn't want to disappoint them.
We don't want to disappoint anybody.
No.
Are you ready?
Ready.
Get a chair, grab a seat, or we'll sweep you off your feet. We move, we groove, you got Mel. Ease your legs, rest a while, all you gotta do is smile. We're swell, can't you tell you got Mel? When the show begins, you better hold on real tight, or before you know it, you'll be high as a kite. Take a break, settle down, we're the only show in town. SRO, don't you know you got Mel? Give it up, don't think twice, we're a hurricane on ice. What the hell, give a yell, ring your bell, show and tell. Mademoiselle, give a smell, you got Mel.
You've got Mel. And Mel is so fortunate to have on the show Dr. Amy Murrell. So, but let's start with your whole name. You have so many names. I think there's a children's book here somewhere. Um, so there's Amy, which is I
Yes.
guess your first name,
Yes.
and then there's Rebecca,
Yes. Yes. My middle name.
your
Yes.
middle name, and Epstein
My maiden name. Yes.
and Murrell.
Yes. My married name. Yes.
Oh, that was so simple. With a doctor in front because you're a PhD in psychology.
Correct. Correct. Yeah.
It's, and where are you speaking from in the world?
Memphis, Tennessee. I'm in the office in my home in Memphis.
So it's 8 o'clock in the morning.
It is 8 o'clock in the morning.
Well, thank you for waking up so early. And are you going into work today, or are you working from the house?
I'm working from the house. Yes. I have not worked outside of my house since March.
Wow.
So, yeah.
So also psychological consulting over Zoom.
Yes. And seeing patients over Zoom, teaching psychology classes over Zoom, lots and lots of meetings like this.
It's so nice to meet you.
It's
Uh,
very nice to meet you.
you're a wonderful soul. So let's start at the very beginning. Let's start with the baby Amy. Where did you come from?
Um, well, I was born right here in Memphis, Tennessee. And my parents are both from Memphis. I lived most of my life in Memphis. I went to graduate school in Mississippi, not too far away, about an hour and a half away from Memphis. And I went to graduate school. I went straight from graduate school, that's what I meant to say, to a job as a professor in Texas. And loved that, but was really feeling the need to be back home in Memphis, Tennessee. So about a year,
Because of Elvis Presley.
yes, definitely because of Elvis Presley. Um, Honestly, because just Memphis really felt like home, and Texas never quite felt like home. My parents are in their late 70s and thankfully still in good health. But I wanted to spend time with them while they were still in good health. Um, I do not have biological children, but I had helped raise multiple children who actually refer to me as their mother,
Wow.
because I played such a big role in their lives. And they are getting married and having children, and they're in Memphis. And it just felt like it was time to come home. So, almost exactly a year ago today, 1 week from now, it will be 1 year. We came home to
One second,
Memphis.
this is complicated. I need now to put on my my mathematical hat. So, yesterday, 1 week from tomorrow, you'll have been a year in Memphis,
Correct.
and you got a position at a leading university in Memphis.
Yes, although I am not in a full-time tenured line, which was by choice. I'm teaching adjunct classes so that I could focus on writing and really giving that a go a bit more. Yeah.
Okay, so we have this in common, that we had academic careers, but we have this in our heart. We have this dream to write stories for kids.
Yes.
So I'm going to have to take you back now to your painful childhood.
Okay.
Okay, so because you know my theory, I'm not a
I've
psychologist.
heard your theory.
Yeah, and you think I'm right or wrong?
I don't know that I agree.
Okay, so what's happening? Not that there's people that are joining us today that don't know the theory,
Okay.
and the theory is that those of us who write for children have some unfinished business of our own as children, that we are actually writing to our own child to try and deal with the pain. And you think I'm wrong, and that's really bad because you're a PhD in psychology. I'm not. So this is like oy vey, everybody. Okay, so your early childhood, Amy.
Um, the very, I will say the very first book about my life that I actually did not write, one of my graduate students wrote, but about my life, was about a very early childhood memory that was very painful and that shaped many of my experiences. So much so that, my graduate students knew about it. And that fits your theory.
Okay, are you going to
Um,
share this?
and it was a book called Too Little. Um, and it came from this experience at the end of my first week of kindergarten. My kindergarten teacher said to the class, it's time to take your mats home, the mats that you sleep on, to be washed. Everybody pick up your mats to take them home, except for you, Amy. You're too little. We'll have to get your mom to come and get yours. And I was floored. I mean, just absolutely, I was shocked. I didn't know what that meant. I learned in that moment, and this is absolutely, true. I learned in that moment that I was different in some way than other kids. And I am 4'9", and I don't weigh in the 3-digit numbers. I'm tiny. And when I was in kindergarten, I was very, very tiny. Like I wasn't on the growth charts at all. But I didn't know that. Like, my mom was also a mental health professional for children. She has a doctorate in counseling. My father was very encouraging and positive, and all I ever knew was that if you want to do something, you can do it. Until that moment. And I was like, what the heck is too little? But I knew that it was bad. And from that moment on, too little as a phrase definitely pushed me around in my life and in all sorts of ways. So, this book, which I wish I had with me, and I don't, um,
We can put a link to it below the interview,
yeah, we could do that. My,
along with your books.
yes, that would be great. Um, my graduate student presented to me on the day that I hooded her with her doctorate. And what it is it starts off by saying, Amy loved to spin around. Amy loved to draw. Amy loved to eat chocolate cupcakes with frosting. And Amy was so excited to go to school. And then something happened. Teacher said, okay, class, pick up your mats, except for you, Amy, because you're too little. And Amy thought, what's too little? But she pushed and pulled and tried some more, and she realized the mat was rather big. And then she went home, and her mother said, how was your day? And Amy said, fine, I liked it. But she wasn't really fine because too little was there. And there's this picture of this like monster looking thing behind Amy. And it says, and too little was there when she spun around. When all the things that, it said Amy liked to do. When she ate chocolate cupcakes with frosting, and there's this monster over her now. And it talks about all these ways that I, in my real life, did try to deal with too little. Like, look what I can do. And it shows me like walking across the stage, getting a PhD, shows me being like this competitive gymnast, winning all of these like 10, 10, 10s. So I would definitely agree that there was like this defining moment in my childhood.
Yeah, everything you've said up until now just supports my theory.
I get it. I get it. And this book that my student wrote based on things that I had told her is like a classic example of a picture book illustrating how that happened in my life. But it's interesting because my student wrote it. I didn't write it. Everything that I have written since then, I think has come out of me sort of having grown from that place and attempting to reach back into it to help kids who haven't grown from that place.
Someday maybe you'll have a show and then I'll be able to tell you what happened to me when I was 5. But, the more we're talking, and my heart goes out to this 5-year-old Amy. And I think that we all have these kindergarten moments, at least the sensitive ones.
Yes. Yeah.
And then, I rest my case, dear. I don't think that 4'9" is little. It might be petite, but it's not little. And you look like a darling. I just want to reach out and grab you here from Ramat Gan. And who knows, maybe someday we will meet at an SCBWI meeting.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not that tall. I'm 5'8". I'm probably 5'6" now. Who measured my height in the last 40 years?
Right.
Yeah. So beyond this, you excelled at gymnastics.
Yes.
You're probably very good at school.
Yes.
You went on to do your PhD in child psychology.
Yes.
And then you became an expert in this ACT thing.
Yes.
Would you like to spend a minute or two explaining what this ACT thing is? You don't have to.
Sure. It's basically ACT is easily summed up by saying that the acceptance and commitment therapy is about recognizing the difference between things that you can readily change in your life and things that you cannot, and working to accept the things that cannot be readily changed. And from an acceptance and commitment therapy perspective, we typically think about thoughts and feelings as things that cannot be readily changed, which is pretty different from other traditional psychotherapies. So I don't really work with my clients or patients on changing their thoughts or feelings. I work with them on changing the way that they relate to their thoughts and feelings, but I don't work with them on changing the content of their thoughts and feelings themselves. And then the commitment part is commitment to behavior change based on values or things that are meaningful and important to you, basically regardless of what you're thinking and feeling, what your external circumstances are that you can't change.
So I'm trying to wrap this around my my head.
So like for a little kid,
yeah,
they might be living in a home where their parents argue a lot, but there wouldn't be like enough violence or something like that for them to be removed from the home. But they obviously can't change their parents arguing. That would be something for them to accept. It would be something for them to accept that that makes them afraid. But what we would work on is not letting the fear that they have control their lives, so that they could still do things that matter to them, like telling an adult who is a safe adult when they are afraid, and making a plan to help regulate their own emotions, like taking deep breaths or imagining peaceful scenes or doing progressive muscle relaxation when the scary things that are going on in their home is going on, rather than just checking out and avoiding their own thoughts and feelings.
So rather than exorcise these thoughts, it's a matter of just kind of going with the flow and then saying, okay, what do I do now?
Correct. So accepting that there are some things that you cannot change, but rather than avoiding those things, which we know from scientific research makes them worse, saying, I cannot control these things, but I can control the way that I react to them. Suppressing and avoiding and attempting to control makes them worse, but I can control my own behavior in response to them. Here are the things that I can do that matter to me to protect myself, to focus on things that I care about. Maybe I can go to a friend's house where I do feel safe. That kind of thing.
Or maybe I can grow a garden.
Maybe I can grow a garden.
Okay, so let's talk about your new book. What's happening with your new book? You sent me some PDFs. It looks remarkable.
Thank you.
Where is it going?
So it is the 6th book in a series, the Becca Epps series. And speaking of names, Becca Epps comes directly from those 2 middle names in my name. If you think about Amy Rebecca Epstein Murrell, Becca Epps is right there.
So now we have 6 names to remember. Okay.
I
have to say, I'm not a psychologist, but I think you're compensating here. I say, okay, maybe I'm short, but I'm going to have the longest name in the Western Hemisphere.
Maybe so.
Maybe I should be a psychologist. Keep going. So Becca, where do we find
So
the
Becca Epps
series?
is the sixth in this series called the Becca Grows a Garden is the sixth in the Becca Epps series on bending your thoughts, feelings, and behaviors. And all six are being published by Shawnee Scientific Press. The first three are already for sale at shawneescientific.com. And the remaining three are all set to come out within the next year and a half. I honestly don't know the exact dates.
Wait, so
Wish I did.
What is this? What is this publisher, Shawnee Scientific? We should have this whole program all about names. Shawnee Scientific Press.
Yes.
What kind of publishing house is that?
It's a psychoeducational press. So they publish all books about psychology and education. I have no idea where they got their name, but
Well, because psychologists want to think that they're scientists, so that's probably. We should have done some ACT on them and say, you know what? You're a psychologist. You're not a scientist, and that's okay. That's all right.
it's a social science.
Well, yeah, okay, but you see, so I would take all the social scientists in the world and run them through your program, because I think that it's okay not to be a scientist. It's even better. I was a scientist for, 40 years, and now I'm not. And I'm prouder of myself not being a scientist. And when I'm on your show, I'll tell you why, but not right now. So this is a psychological publishing house.
Correct.
It's publishing your books for kids, which are
Yes.
children's books, which is
Yes.
remarkable. And do you have any PDF that you can show people of your new book? Some picture in your hand? No?
I don't have the newest one in my hand. I've got some other ones.
Yeah, just show one.
This
Amy, you have to market yourself. You have to come prepared,
well, here's the one just before that one.
Okay.
It's called What Matters Most.
And what matters most?
It is a book about values. So I just said behavioral commitment to the things that matter to you. So this one is What Matters Most. And it is set in Memphis, Tennessee, because that's one of the things, it's a place that matters most to me. This is Becca and her cousin, Lissa. And it says, Becca Epps lives in a big city by a big river with limestone bluffs. Don't tell anyone. Sculptures and statues can hear me, she whispers to her cousin. They listen to what I say. And then her cousin says, you and your crazy imagination. Let's just get this tour over with. And then in the book, they go on a tour of Memphis. And as you go on a tour throughout the city, you discover all the things that are important to Becca. They go to a nature center, and you learn that animals are important to Becca. And then they go to the Civil Rights Museum, where she thinks that the statue of Rosa Parks is speaking to her. And they go to Beale Street and listen to music. And they talk about how music unites people with different backgrounds.
Show me the page on Graceland.
There's no Graceland picture.
Okay.
So here's the thing. Everything Elvis Presley is very highly trademarked.
Ah. So we had to think of maybe Grapeland or something.
I looked into it. And the Elvis Presley Foundation said no, no, no. Whereas like the Civil Rights Museum was like, we think this is a great idea for children. That is wonderful. Do that.
I think that you are amazing because first of all, you're going against the flow. You're writing books that I teach my students not to write, which are books that are didactic and have, heavy moralistic
messages. Yeah.
Yeah, but you're doing it so damn well. I may have to change my thinking because the new book you sent me is terrific. One second, but before that, let's go back to the number 5, which I haven't seen. So the girl, so if there were a girl who came to you and says, Amy, I speak to statues, right?
Yeah.
You wouldn't medicate her. You would say, okay, what do they tell you?
Probably. I mean, and especially if she's like this character is supposed to be like, picture book age. Like.
Now, maybe at the end of the story, yeah, I love it. But at the end of the story, do the statues really talk?
No, and here's the thing, actually. Here's the thing. So, all right, so
this is what happens when I come unprepared because I haven't seen this book, you see.
Okay, so here's the thing. Like she says, well, and I should have told you this. She shakes the hand of one of the property's many scarecrows. Nice to see you again. Are you keeping up the rain garden? In that moment, which is a thing that repeats throughout the book, in that moment, a wind gust knocks water from the scarecrow's watering can. See, Lissa, I told you. So she thinks the scarecrow is responding to her, but it's really the wind. In the museum, she's talking to Rosa Parks when the loudspeaker from the museum comes on, playing a canned message. And she like nudges her cousin, like, look what I did, and the cousin's like, coincidence.
One second. So let's take a break here. You have a Jewish name.
Yes.
Okay. Why do you have a Jewish name?
Because I'm a Jew.
Okay. Good. So in Judaism, there's this thing called bashert,
Yes.
Things that are meant to be.
Yes.
I don't know whether you're religious or not.
I am.
But this is exactly, the world is in some particular way because there's some divine entity that's somehow organized it.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's really amazing. And and a few words about your new story, which I have read.
The garden, Becca builds a garden. Yeah. So the idea in Becca builds a garden. Well, let me say this first. I knew that these books were more didactic than traditional picture books. I mean, I've been studying how to write picture books now for 7 years or so. I've been to lots of workshops and seminars, and I've taken online classes. And I try to make them still entertaining and fun and not too preachy. Like it's still kind of, I think, a fun story in there. Like how there's this back and forth between Becca and her cousin in this one. Like where she's, she says she talks to statues and they listen to her, but really it's just like the wind blows and the museum speaker comes on and her cousin's like, And so like if a kid came to me like clinically, I would ask like things to determine, could it be coincidence? And also throughout here, we're learning what matters to her. The reason that Becca buys into this stuff is because That's what she values. She wants to buy into the fact that Rosa Parks is talking to her because, like, standing up for people who can't stand up for themselves matters to her. She wants to believe that the wind gust knocks over the scarecrow's can because the scarecrow, cares about the environment, because caring about the environment matters to her. So, like, yeah, clinically, I would explore that stuff because that's more likely than a kid being psychotic. So, first of all, there's that. And so I'm okay with these being a little didactic for that reason. Like, if this is going to help kids in therapy, or if this is going to help teachers in a classroom make the distinction between kids being crazy or not crazy, then I'm okay with it being a little teaching. Now back to Becca Builds a Garden. Becca Builds a Garden. Okay.
So, like, you're dealing, so I'm, very often I interview amazing people like you. And after the interview, I say, oh my goodness, I have to change the way I'm thinking about the world. And I think that you're one of these people. I do hope we stay in touch because your message is really, really, really important. Because we all have superstitions, and some of us are religious, and of course you can't prove that God exists.
Right.
So one person's religion is another person's psychosis.
Right.
Now, you should excuse me for that, but it is.
No, yeah, sure.
And I think it's wonderful. And you say, okay, it doesn't matter. If you think that, I don't know, if you think that scarecrows talk to you, well, who am I to say no? And there's a famous story. There's even a psychological thing called Martha Mitchell syndrome, which I have to tell you about because it's so important to me. Martha Mitchell was the wife of a minister in Nixon's government, and she used to tell her friends, you can't believe what goes on in the White House at night. People come and go at midnight with millions of dollars in cash. And they, of course, thought that she's Michigan.
Yeah.
She's like talking to the scarecrows like your hero.
Right.
They found out about Watergate that people were actually walking in and out of the White House with bags with millions of dollars. So there's something called the Martha Mitchell syndrome.
Wow.
You should look it up.
I've never heard of that before.
Of people that think that someone else is psychotic when actually they're actually telling the truth.
Right.
It's completely unbelievable. So this is wonderful. Tell us about your new book.
Okay. So in Becca Builds a Garden, the book starts off with Becca and her grandmother, her bubby, sitting at their table, and Bubby is saying that she's going to go work in the community garden. Again, here's this reflection of values and commitment to do something related to values, something that's important or that matters most. I have all the other books here too, just not the last one.
Which is the only one I read. I'm going to read them all now.
Thank you. Saying that, this is important to me to have a sense of community, to have a sense of protecting the environment. I'm going to go work in this garden. And she's going to do it with Tommy's abuela. And Becca says, why don't kids have plots in the community garden? I want to do that too. And Bubby says, if you can figure out how to raise the money that it takes, then I'll make sure to advocate for you. I mean, not these exact words are used, but this is the message. Then I'll advocate for kids to be allowed to do it. So Becca sets off to have a garden, and she's going to find the money. So first, being a very precocious, and Becca is loosely based on me, being a very precocious, verbally advanced kid. She's like, I'm going to raise the money myself. And she gets on the phone. But in the typical rule of threes that happens in picture books, first person tells her no, second person tells her no. And then she's like, I better do something different. So she tries to raise the money. She has a lemonade stand, and that is also a bust. She has to use money that she saved up, but she does raise the money. And then we learn a little bit about mindfulness, because Becca, as we have learned in Becca Epps Learns to Be in book 2, tends to be a little bit flighty and impulsive, again, loosely based on me. And she doesn't pay attention to a very blatant sign in the store that says, don't plant these things together. And so she makes a mistake in the garden. One little nice thing about this book is that it kind of throws back to earlier books. So in Becca Epps Learns to Be, we learn about bunny breathing, where you go to help regulate your vagus nerve, give you a calmer, more regulated autonomic nervous system. Also in book 2, Tommy, whose grandmother Bubby is working in the garden with, and Becca have a little run-in. And Becca actually loses her cool and hits Tommy in book 2. And at the end of book 2, there's a bit of a cliffhanger where Becca goes to apologize to Tommy, but it's left open to interpretation at the end of the book whether Tommy will accept her apology. So here in book 6, they're working together, and you can see that they're friends. And so it's a nice kind of tie-in to book 2. But I left it in book 2 open so that kids could, come up with on their own, like, what do you think would happen? So the kids and the adults end up working together, calming themselves down, again, doing some emotion regulation sorts of things, which they really have also kind of been taught in book 3, although you don't have to know book 3, which is Hugging the Hard Stuff, which is all about acceptance of your emotions, because they're taught again in book 6 in Building the Garden, to come together as a community to build this garden. And at the end, Bubby basically talks about how proud she is of Becca, and Becca acknowledges that she's really proud of herself too, because she had to push through all of these challenges that were both external barriers. Remember, I said acceptance of external barriers, and internal barriers, like her getting kind of impulsive and flighty and figuring out ways to commit to push through them, and do what mattered to her anyway, and build the garden.
It's terrific. I'm going to have to now rethink all my my thoughts and theories here. I'm also going to invite you to, I teach beginners. I'm going to invite you as an author, I think, to visit my class and talk to them a bit and tell them why I'm wrong. I also want to say 2 things. First of all, your first book was on Our Books.
Yes.
Which I'm really, really proud of. And we want to encourage more people to publish stuff that they don't think is commercial, perhaps, on a website that loves all kinds of books. So I want to congratulate you for that. And as we get to know each other better, which I hope we will, perhaps I can persuade you to write a book with no redeeming qualities whatsoever. It's very interesting because, on the one hand, you're writing for kids, but you're also writing kind of books that you're the hero of. And psychologists will say that all the books that we write, we're the heroes of our own stories.
Mm-hmm.
And it's all about tikkun. It's all about finding the right way to live your life.
Right.
Which is really marvelous.
Thank you.
So you're a PhD in psychology.
Yes.
And I'm going to ask you now about the Beatles.
Okay.
I always ask people about the Beatles.
Okay.
Do you like the Beatles? I know it's not your generation, but do you like the Beatles?
I do. I do.
Do you have a favorite song?
Probably Imagine.
Okay, Imagine is a good song. It's a little after the Beatles. It's John Lennon, but we all love John Lennon.
Oh.
That's okay. And now I'm going to ask you to do something really silly, Amy.
Okay.
I'm going to ask you to sing a little bit of it.
Okay. All right. Imagine all the people living in the world today. How much?
More. I didn't know you could sing. It's beautiful.
Now I'm blanking on words.
Look, you're making me look like a fool. I'm going like this in this.
Okay.
Right?
Imagine there's no heaven. But now I feel bad because it's not really a Beatles song. Let It Be?
No. Listen. We have to talk. You have to get out of this doing the right thing.
I am kind of a rule follower.
Yeah, if you were in my class, okay, I would be teaching you to do the wrong thing. I don't know whether it's the right thing to teach you to do the wrong thing. But even though Imagine is not a strict Beatles song, it's still one of the most favorite songs in the world, written by John Lennon, who's a revered member of the Beatles.
Yeah.
Who left us prematurely.
Yeah.
And if you believe in God, you have to ask yourself why. He should have still been with us. And please sing it because you sing so beautifully. Start at the beginning. Imagine.
I don't know.
Doesn't matter.
Imagine there's no heaven.
It's easy
if you try. No hell, no.
Yeah, no hell below us.
Below us.
Above us.
Above us, only sky. Why am I blanking on the word? I'm nervous now. I don't know why I'm nervous.
I've taken you outside your comfort zone. Which is we'll sing it together. Imagine all the
people living in this world. No.
For the day you can say I'm a dreamer.
Oh, I'm a dreamer.
Sweetheart, you picked this song.
And now I can't remember.
Okay, but I'm not the only one.
But I'm not the only one.
I hope someday you'll join us.
Maybe someday you'll join us and the world will live as one.
This is remarkable. I feel a real connection to you as an academic who's trying to do something so silly as to write for children.
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty crazy to like to leave a full-time tenured professorship. Who does that, right?
I did.
Yeah, we did.
Yeah. So, and how did you find this Shawnee Scientific Publishing? Do you have an agent?
Sorry, how did I find
An
them?
agent connect you?
No, I submitted the first book, which is a real abnormal. It's like 800 words. And it's a rhymer, which you're never supposed to do in the beginning. But this is when we get introduced to Becca. This is Becca, who's brave and intelligent too. She likes dancing and learning and playing kazoo. She's soft-spoken unless a good friend suffers hurt, at which point there's no telling what things she might blurt. She rarely gets mad, and she's never too blue, but at times she feels broken and wants a redo. And so I submitted it to several places that I thought it might work. The one place I did not try that I actually still think it might have gone is Imagination Press, which is the press of the American Psychological Association. And that was kind of next on my list. But I had a friend who knew that I had sent it to, multiple places. And it just, kept getting rejected. And I knew that it was a weird thing. I mean, I knew it was. But I was also very set on this book. I See Me More Than One Tree. And in the beginning, it was just this. I mean, this was it. It was this 800-word rhymer, and it ends with, like the forest stays constant amid lots of change, I am always here, though my thoughts and feelings range. I know I am greater, and like everyone I meet, I am the forest. I am perfect. I am whole and complete. And it was going to introduce this world to this character named Becca Epps, and how she was greater than her thoughts and her feelings and her experiences. And so I had this friend that knew I'd sent it to, like a bunch of places. Like I'd gotten, 8 or 9 rejections.
Oh,
and my friends.
Nothing. I've gotten 800 or 900, dear. 8 is nothing.
Yeah. I mean, I know that in the big scheme of things, I do know that. But I had this friend who said, I know someone who has published a treatment manual for this company that uses your acceptance and commitment therapy protocol as part of their treatment manual. They're not big, but they have been around for several years. They have published several psychological things, and no kids books, but I'm just wondering if he might be willing to branch out. Why don't you give him a call? So I called him, and he actually was a little starstruck.
You phoned them? You phoned them?
Yes.
So you've done all the wrong things. Your manuscript is too long. It rhymes. Those are 2 oives.
Yes.
And the third oive is you actually phone them on a telephone.
Yep.
Okay.
Like the audacity, right?
That's a nice way of putting it. Yeah.
Yeah. But I had this advantage, which, I mean, huge advantage, that I was the first person who had ever published on acceptance and commitment therapy with children. I was the first person who had ever done a randomized controlled trial of acceptance and commitment therapy with children. And this man had published a treatment manual using my treatment protocol with acceptance and commitment therapy. And he was like, oh, I don't know, printing for picture books is a totally different thing. I mean, like, this is not what I do. And then he was like, let me check into it. Let me talk to a couple printing presses. And then like a couple of weeks later, he emailed me and he said, would you be willing to do a series, one for each book? One for each process of the acceptance and commitment therapy model.
How many are there?
6.
So you're working now. You're like Harry Potter now.
And so I said, you want me to write a picture book for each of the 6 acceptance and commitment therapy processes? And he said, yeah, you willing to do that? And I was like, okay. So then that's how that happened.
Remarkable. So I guess sometimes it's good to break all the rules.
I guess sometimes. And you know, I was just gonna say, who knows if I'll ever write anything else successful and published by a traditional publisher ever.
Well, we have to have another session on what is successful.
Yeah.
I'm going to send you now back to my conversation with Julie Headland, who persuaded me to understand that we're never here. We're always there. We're always there. And that was a powerful lesson for me, leaving 2020 and going into 2021.
Yeah.
So you are in a place where most people have not even gotten to. It's okay to dream about another there.
Yeah.
But lady, for me, you are there. And for you, you should be also. So listen, this has been a terrific way to get acquainted. And I hope we'll continue this conversation, because on the one hand, we're so alike.
Yeah.
And on the other hand, we're so different.
Yeah.
And that's wonderful. So Amy, with a very long name, Dr. Amy Rebecca Becca Epstein Murrell. I hope that you feel well, and that 2021 is more than swell. I don't rhyme anymore, dear. Anyway, it's been great meeting you. I've wanted to do this for years. And take care of yourself. Lovely meeting you.
It was very nice to meet you.
Put all your links underneath here.
Okay.
And share this.
I will.
It's a document.
Yes.
It's almost peer-reviewed. No, it isn't. Take care of yourself, dear.
Thanks, you too.
A lot of fun.
It was nice. Thank you.